G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we are talking all about mid-price madness. Last podcast on the defenders, going through the players that may be the ones that make or break your team, the biggest value in the game. So let's go!
Just done it from nowhere. Oh, kicked the goal from inside the centre. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty. Petty. Petrarca. Oh, wow. How good is that? The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy. And Luke joining us once again, last Defender podcast today.
Yeah, mate, excited. You can find me at Luke Rojo17 on Twitter. And I think of all the Defender podcasts, this is the one people are probably most excited to see, aren't they, Mitch? This is where you kind of find a diamond in the rough and hopefully build your team around some mid-prices.
Mid-prices. They're a dangerous word. It's a dangerous thing in AFL fantasy.
It's a dirty word.
They can be season-changing picks. They can be league-winning picks. But they can also
season-changing picks either way.
Either way, they can also wreck your season.
Yeah.
So if I refer back to my rule in our first podcast, don't be afraid of the mid-pricer, but you can have too many. You can go a bit crazy. You can have some mid-price madness.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think that I want to say right off the bat here with these mid-prices, we want to pick the best mid-pricer. Like, you only really need one or two in each line. And so we're gonna put out a lot of different names here, but really we only really need to pick one or two ones that we're really sure on. And I think if you go too crazy and you pick too many and a few of them flop, well, then you're going to find yourself into trouble.
That's it. We're not recommending that you pick all of these guys, but take on board what we say, but then also do your own research, listen to some other content as well, and see if you can identify which you think will be the best defender mid-pricer of 2023.
Yeah, so we're going to go through a few names here. No, not all of them we believe in. Not all of them are the ones that we like, and we'll talk about them when we get there. But these are the names that I've seen people discuss. These are the names that I've seen on Twitter and other podcasts and things like that. We're just going to have our take and also some of the ones that we think obviously are the ones that should be coming under your consideration. So,
sure. Who's leading us off, Mitch?
Yeah, so again, we'll start, obviously, the last premium podcast, we were going 85 or above. Yep. So everyone eligible for this one, basically between 85 and the 300k where the rookies basically are. Yeah. So first player that we're going to start off here is a Weagle, Liam Duggan, who is someone he's interesting. Now, the most expensive player that we're going to talk about today,
he is
83.6 priced at 740,000. So,
look, he's improved year to year, and there's no denying he's a pretty integral part of West Coast setup. They like the way he goes about it. I like the way he goes about it as well. But in this particular instance, being the most expensive of these guys, in my opinion, there's guys who present better value. Your thoughts?
He's someone that if you're selecting him, he's almost like a discounted premium. So he's not typically what you think of as a mid-pricer. Now with our cutoff, he is someone that is going to be in this podcast, but he is someone that if you're picking him, you want him to basically be a premium for you. You're expecting him to take that jump up to be that guy around that sort of sixth ranked defender sort of level.
You don't see him making enough money to be a stepping stone, do you?
He's not traditionally what you would think of as a mid-pricer as a stepping stone, but he's definitely, I think he does present some value, whether or not it's enough. The value that we see in him, I think, is in his splits. Missed a couple of games to start the season, was a bit interrupted to begin the year, but came home strong in this second half of the year, averaged
107 in his last five.
107 in his last five, 93 post-bye as well, so it wasn't just a small sample size last five, it was the entire half of the last season. So there is something there, different to, I think, who did we talk about? Brandon Ellis last podcast, who we sort of dismissed his stats in the last five. I think there is something a little bit here for Liam Duggan. He is 26 years old, so right in the prime of his career.
People definitely look at that last five and think, geez, 107, that's tempting. But like Mitch said before, you have to ask yourself, is Liam Duggan going to take that step to be one of your top six defenders? The answer is probably no, because he just doesn't present. He doesn't present enough value to be somebody who's going to make a heap of cash and then be a stepping stone. So he's not a top 6 defender. So where does that leave him? He's kind of in no man's land a little bit. And while he's a good player, and I mean AFL player, not necessarily fantasy, he's not getting a place in my team.
He is. I'm not going to rule him out at this stage. I still think that there is a reason that you would select him, and he is someone that I do think is worth a watch in the preseason. What's happening with Shannon Hearn? If he ever went down, I think that Liam Duggan might be the guy that really benefits if that ever did happen, or if he rests some games, or maybe takes a half-step role if he's 1 foot out the door into retirement. I think Liam Duggan might be the guy that benefits, but I agree with you. Right now at this stage in January, I think that he is someone that probably doesn't present enough value for me, and it's just a little bit too much of that awkward price tag for old Duggo.
I think so too. Now, this next fella,
lead us off.
We could get crucified for our takes. I feel like we have a similar take on this fella. Now, he's probably, of all these mid prices, would you agree he's probably been the most talked about, like Twitter, other pods?
I think I've heard his name a lot. I mean, it's early days. Obviously, the pods are still firing up and things like that. But I have heard his name go out there. People are excited about this player.
And
who are we talking about?
We're talking about Andy McGrath, and he's a bomber. He's a high draft pick, and there's a few people out there who are definitely leading the campaign for Andy McGrath as being a great mid-price option. Now, I will start by saying there are reasons I can see why people are saying that, but then there's also a lot of reasons when I dug into the stats that I'm kind of just a little bit apprehensive. Let's put it that way. Don't crucify me for this take, because I know there's a lot of people who are high on him.
We're just offering out opinion.
Yeah, that's it. But let's look at his statistics or his averages in the last 3 years. So we've got a Corona Ball 77, we've got 2021 82, and then we've got 2022 81. Now, let me direct your attention to the start of 2021. So now I think this is, Mitch, is why there's a lot of people who are very high on McGrath. So he started 2021, round 1, 141. Okay, then he goes 82, 92, 71, 133, 86, 97, 75, 109. So there's scores in there, and there's probably an average across those games that does put him in the category of being one of the better defenders in the comp. But after that, he gets injured on 15. He misses a heap of games. He comes back that season and he scores low in the last few games of that season.
Yep.
So comes back in 2022. There's a couple of good scores in there. There's a few times he goes over 100, but most of the scores are kind of like a mediocre 70, low 80 kind of score. And it means there's a bit of recent data on McGrath, but none of it that fills me with heaps of confidence. I know people have a different take on this. Mitch, you might be able to give some more info, but I just, when I looked at the stats, I just wasn't filled with confidence, man.
I think for me, Andrew McGrath, when we talk about that 2021 start to the season, that was him playing in a midfield role.
Yeah, 50 to 60% CBAs in that time.
Yeah, so he was up there in the midfield, came back.
But then people are justifying this huge improvement that he's going to have as him going back to half back.
Yeah, so
then that
and that's
kind of
the wording, right?
It, doesn't it?
I think that's the wording coming out of the Bombers so far. I think Brad Scott was saying that he wants to put people in the positions that they enjoy or are good at. Or
so for McGrath, that's half back, but his best scoring in the last 2 years has come with 50 to 60% CBA.
It has. So
it kind of contradicts what people are saying.
I think that I still maintain that for most players, centre bounce mid is the preferred position. Now I know Jaden Short has thrown that spanner in the works, and I think a lot of people will hold on to that for a lot of these defenders.
Yeah.
But I think when we talked about Mason Redman in the most recent podcast, talking about overvalued players, there are actually a few players on the Bombers that love the run and carry off halfback. You talk about Nick Hind, you talk about Dyson Heppel plays a bit back there.
Ridley.
You've got Ridley, you've got Redman. There's a few guys there that share the ball around, and we've spoken about before, like the Bulldogs. There's a few guys there that there's too many mouths to feed in terms of that role in particular. In last year, if we just talk about last year, he averaged 81 points when he played 30% or less CBAs, so basically that halfback role.
Yep.
And he averaged 84.3 when he played in 30% or more, so which was an average of 65% CBAs.
And there's a good sample size from last year. I know
6 games where he played their midfield role.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple of missed games in there for 2022, but overall, you get a good look at him last year.
You do. So
about it.
So both roles in last season, again, limited sample size, 6 games with the 65% CBAs, but it wasn't a dramatic improvement. And similar to what we talked about with Liam Duggan, priced at 82, you want him really to be going 95 to be justified as a selection in your fantasy side, to be close to that top 6. Again, he's not really a stepping stone. He's like a discounted premium in a way, and statistically, I don't really see the precursors to suggest that he's going to do that. He might be the kind of guy that if you leave out of your side round 1, he goes bang in round 1, and then you make that adjustment. But I don't think you can make that call before seeing anything in a real actual AFL game. Yeah,
and there's obviously a lot of people out there who hold a different opinion to us on this, and all power to them. I hope he goes well, because if he goes well, that's good for all fantasy coaches.
Well, except for me, because I won't pick him.
Yeah, I mean in terms of making that correction that you just mentioned. So, there's every chance he's a high draft pick. He is a good player. There's every chance that he does go big, and we hope he does. But I just wasn't filled with confidence when I dug into it a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So that's
24 years old, turning 25 in halfway through the season. So he's on the younger side, so still might be improving.
Starting to go into his prime.
But yeah, I don't see the big breakout this year that I think you would probably need to select him as your starting sort of D3, D4 sort of player.
And that'll be a reasonably different take to a lot of the stuff that's out there. So I'm interested to see what people have to say.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below if you think we're incorrect with our assessment of Andy McGrath, if you're starting with him. If you
and give
have
some reasons why as well.
If there's something that we've missed, let us know on YouTube comments. We'd love to read all about that. For sure. The next guy here, I think, is...
this guy's a lock.
He's spicy. It's really quite simple.
It is.
It's quite simple, but it's also never simple with this player as well. Harry Himmelberg, price at 80, 708,000. He was a beast last year when he moved to that halfback position. And
I mean, people know what we're going to say. If
he's
he
in
plays
defence,
back,
you put him in your
team.
side.
He's in every team. If he plays forward, he's in no teams. It's pretty simple for him.
Well, I don't know if it's that simple, right? First of all,
talk to me.
First of all, even when he was playing halfback last year, was he playing halfback for entire games at a time?
Yeah, he does risk being that swing
around
man,
a little bit.
he?
He played ruck randomly. He got shifted forward. Yeah. Now, we've got a new coach, so maybe there's a little bit less experimenting and stuff going on to start off with the season. But again, wording out of the camp is that he's training with the forwards.
Yeah, it's disgusting, really.
Richmond have a history as a club of liking players to be versatile. If you think about a Noah Bolter as a similar, maybe to a lesser extent.
So the reason Mitch says Richmond is because the new coach is Adam Kingsley. He's not mincing his words there, but he's from
the Richmond system, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he values that versatility that obviously Himmelberg has been able to show so far.
Yeah,
and that's not what we want for our AFL fantasy players. We want them to be in the role, locked in, and we know what to expect.
So people who played last year will know this, but just some context for anyone who might be new is that for the first 10 games of the season, he averaged 49, and that was predominantly in a forward role.
Yep.
And then in the last 12 games, he averaged 100.
100.3, yeah.
100
so that's
with a ceiling of 161.
So that's top 6 territory. That's premium defender level.
It is. So he'll just be a very close watch, and that's not a hot take at all. Everyone will be watching him, no doubt.
And that's with in mind those games where he got shifted forward, he got shifted into the ruck. So he could have gone bigger.
Yeah,
there was a game in there.
I
think there was a torrential rain game where it was pissing down, and I think he had a game of 66 points that game.
So amongst that 100 average, he had a 66, he had a 69 in there, and then he had a 67 in the last game. So if I did a Calvinator and took out a few of those averages,
he could be right up there.
Yeah, it would be a lot higher.
He has the potential to be one of the top defenders if he's in the right role, but again, very dependent on the wording. I also wouldn't, like, if I'm listening to the coach and I'm thinking, he's going to be in halfback role, but if we need him to, we can go up forward. Like, to me, that's also a red flag.
Okay, so put it to you this way: if that is what comes out, are you picking him?
I think that's enough to scare me off.
Really?
I think it's enough to scare me off. I picked him last year with that in mind anyway, because when I was selecting him, it was close to the buys, and we only had half a season to go. With the whole season, with that kind of versatility and shaking around, I don't think he presents enough value for that risk to be there, when I think that there are other options that I think could be just as good with a little bit more certainty. I don't think it would be a bad selection.
Yeah.
I just think that there might be better selections. I would want guarantees that he's a defender and he's going to stay a defender. that would be what I would prefer. I'd give myself a little bit of wiggle room depending on how things shake out and the closer we get to how tight we are with all our rookies and how much cash we have.
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to have a defence for the rookies.
But we'll see. Yeah, I think right now, just the wording that he's training with the forwards is enough to really scare me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, but it will be a very close watch. What about Mr. Lukey McDonald?
So Lukey McDonald, obviously, he's a guy, obviously plays for North Melbourne, new coach again with Clarko joining the squad. Now,
so priced at 688, 78 average. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that his role is obviously dependent on what they're doing over here. For some reason, I thought he was younger than he was. He's 27, turning 28 very soon in a month's time. So, for some reason, I thought he was younger. He has had stretches in the past where if he's given the right role of halfback, taking the kick-ins, he has put up decent scores. It's always been in like a short little sample size, though. He hasn't really ever done it for long stretches. He's had a few games last year, I think about 5 or 6 games over the ton. I've got some stats here in terms of when he does have the kick-ins. So, in games where I'm just finding my stats here.
Yeah, that's right.
In games where he has at least 3 kick-ins, he averages 87.8, so 88 points.
Okay.
So that puts him at 11 points over his starting price, which is decent enough value. At 77, again, it's that awkward price. Like, do you want him to go 90 plus, 95 plus to be worthwhile? I think you want at least the 90 to 92, so that 15 points upside, get close enough to that top 6. That would put him just below that.
So he does take the majority of the kickouts, but you've got like Aiden Core took 60.
Aaron Hall's obviously there.
Yeah, Aaron Hall in his limited game time. So I think just from the looks of the stats here, I think Hall last year anyway was probably the predominant kick-in taker if he were to play more games. Yeah. So that kind of presents a bit of an issue because if we're backing Hall to have a good year, then potentially that means McDonald has to sacrifice something in terms of kickouts. But all a little bit unknown with North as well, Mitch. I don't know if you mentioned, but it's like Clark is coming in, new coach as well. So there's... When the new coach comes in, there's always unknowns. It can go down a really positive way for fantasy scoring, or it can be the opposite, but you kind of just have to wait and see. You're at the mercy of what the new coach wants to do. Yeah,
so I think for that reason, it's a watch to make sure that, one, is Aaron Hall in the team, first of all. So if Aaron Hall's not in the squad there, I think that definitely does it raises Luke McDonald's ceiling. It also raises his floor, I think, as well. So a lot of those poorer games when he wasn't taking many kick-ins was when Aaron Hall was in the side. So I think that his floor gets raised. You'll see less of those sort of low 40s, 50s, 60s scores, more of those scores 70, 80 plus.
Yeah, there's a game here where McDonald had 0 kick-ins, Hall played, and Hall had 11 kick-ins.
Yeah,
so that kind of gives some context on that.
Yeah, so when that happens, obviously we talked about yes, sometimes the kick-ins can get overvalued, but you give yourself an extra 10 kicks, there's 30 points.
Yeah.
That's definitely going to raise your floor and prevent you from having those truly big stinkers.
Yes.
In a fantasy game. So I think that he presents some value to me, probably at this stage not enough, but just because of the new coach, new game style, I think he's worth a watch in the preseason.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Who we got next?
We have a player that I think came onto the scene last year. He was a bit of value, came in late, but I still think there's a bit more of a ceiling with him. Kadeem Coleman from I wouldn't say but our local Brizzy Lions.
Yeah, Coleman. I think Kitty Coleman came out of Morningside where he used to play as well. So
did he? Okay, there you go. Yeah, 688,000, priced at 77.7, so exact same price as a Luke McDonald.
Yeah. So I don't see Kitty Coleman as being like a massive accumulator, so I don't know if there's a heap of value there. But the two things that I know about him, one is that he is just an elite kicker to football. So
he's really good.
So if you're at Brisbane, he's a guy that you want to get the ball in the hands of. Now, I'd be interested to see how he's influenced as a few of the older Lions defenders kind of drop away. So guys like
Daniel Rich
is the obvious one to think about.
Zorko, who played a bit off halfback as well.
Yes, as these guys kind of like move out of the fold, I'm interested to see whether they show Coleman a real priority in terms of getting the footy in his hands. Because just if you watch him play, you'll see it straight away. He's such a smooth mover and a great kick. even as a junior, my understanding is he wasn't a huge accumulator of the footy. It's just what he does is special. Yeah. You notice every possession when you watch him. So have a look at him. But I would sort of disagree with you a little bit, Mitch, in saying that he presents more value. I can't see him going much bigger than that 77.
The thing is that I think that makes me feel a little bit optimistic about him coming in and presenting some value is he actually, prior to last season, was playing more as a forward. And last year was his first year playing as that halfback sort of a player. And often in times we've seen players that when they start a new position, it takes them about 12 months to really get going. Like if you think about... Sorry, go on.
No, sorry, I cut you off there, but I was going to say, keep in mind, I think he has played a little bit of the halfback role as a junior as well. So but you're not wrong. I mean, playing a position at AFL level is very different to playing a position at QAFL or NEFL level.
Yeah.
So, I think there's some merit to that take.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, we've got some recent examples with that, maybe in a different position, but someone like a Rory Laird, when he moved into the midfield, we saw flashes. He averaged 111, I think, his first year there. Next year, in the same position, nothing really changed, but obviously we saw what happened last year. So I think we can see a player get a bit more comfortable in that position, especially a player as young as Kadeem Coleman. He's only 22 years old, so going into his fourth year in the AFL, we always talk about the fourth year breakout. Whilst I don't think that that's like an umbrella thing that we can throw out there, I think in his case it is something that we could look at. He's played 35 games so far in the AFL, so he's going to be, again, approaching that 50 game mark this season if he's healthy. So I think averaged, what did he average? 90, was it 70. 82 in his last, after the bye. So
he's got
a little bit of upside. I think, I still think that there's maybe not enough meat on the bone, but it would not shock me if he comes out and really takes a step up this year. I think there's still a bit of upside with Kadeem Coleman.
Take this stat as well, because this might even reinforce your opinion. So, I think it's pretty obvious. Who do you think took most kickouts of the Lions last year?
It's Rich by a landslide.
Yeah, by heaps. But then who took the second most?
Was it Kadeem?
Yeah. So, there's a huge difference. So, Rich took 145, Kadeem took 35. But for me, my mind looks to the future and thinks, okay, well, if we're getting to the point where we're starting to transition Rich out, who are we going to be blooding with the kick-ins? If we like the way he kicks, it's Kitty Coleman, and maybe we overrate the kick-ins a little bit too much. But if you have 3 or 4 more kick-ins a game, that's enough to be valued.
It also signifies just more trust that the club has in him. They're going to be looking for him to get the ball a bit more in his hands. So I think that
I'd like to see him play on a little bit more.
Yeah,
his play on percentage was only 63%, so he's got to learn how to get the stat. But
someone tell him that he gets a disposal if he leaves.
Maybe he doesn't know.
Yeah, he's young kid, so come on, mate. Let's get outside that square. So again, kind of falls into that awkward kind of price where I don't know if there's enough upside for me to select him, but it is someone that I'm watching him in the preseason with at least an optimistic viewpoint that potentially there is something there. So. I think that he is someone that I think I'm not crossing off my list just yet. This next guy, however, is the guy he's in my team right now. Next guy.
He's in my team. See, I thought I was going to get a hot take here, but Mitch and I have read each other's minds. So Christian Salem. He was one that was kind of, he was on my radar, but not as much until I dug into the stats. Yeah. Once I dug into the stats, I'm really, really high on this guy. Mitch, talk to us about why.
So obviously he last year had that injured affected game, first round, injured on 3 points. So right there, huge, terrible score baked into his average, so that's going to bring his price down. He also came back into the side, and when he came back into the side, Angus Brayshaw had moved into a little bit of his role. He's also been someone that has had the runs on the board in seasons past.
2021, do you have his stats there? I've got a couple too. 2021
averaged 93, 2020 averaged 71.3, but again, in that COVID year, so that's probably closer to that 85, high 80s, low 90s sort of number. 2019, basically averaged the 90 as well. So 3 years in a row where he's averaged close to 90 points. This season comes in price
73
at
or something.
73.
Yeah, so I just don't see a world. If he plays all the games, there's not a world where he goes less than, where he goes 73. He's got to go 85 plus, in my opinion.
I think he's a 90 plus player. I think there's runs on the board to suggest that.
Let's hope so.
I also think that with players like an Angus Brayshaw moving into the centre bounce,
he's going to be the man back
He's
there.
going to be the man. They've got a guy coming in running the wing, so I think that...
I thought you were going to talk about Jake Bowie off halfback.
No, not Jake Bowie.
The Warn Dog would be having nightmares.
Yeah, and we know he does listen to this podcast, so...
That's generous, mate. That's
generous. So I think that with... who's the guy that I'm thinking about? Lockie Hunter, coming from the Bulldogs, coming into Melbourne. Okay. So I think that means that we're going to have Brayshaw in the middle, Hunter on the wing, and you're going to have Salem in his traditional roll-off half-back. Yeah. So I think that he is basically, at worst, a 90 player. So that gives him about 17 points of upside.
You're picking him, aren't you? Like, he's tried and tested. You mentioned the stats before. There's, the Corona year. He's a little bit down, but everything other than that suggests... 90 plus, other than just an injury affected.
I think that 90 plus is enough of a guy that you can carry through to the buys, and when you get to those luxury trades, then you're starting to get him to sort of that best 6 player. So I think that he's not someone that's going to hurt you earlier on in the season. He feels really quite safe in terms of that sort of guy that...
Who takes the kick in? Let me just have a bit of a look at some kick-in data for...
Yeah, have a look at those kick-in datas, but I think that, for me, he is, of all the guys, not to poo-poo the guys that we're going to talk about later, but of all the guys that I've got here on this mid-pricer list, he is the player that I think is the most upside. If you average his season out last year, when you take out that 3, he averaged 81 points. Yep. When he came back into the side and Brayshaw moved into the mids, he finished the year putting up a 99 and 104 before the finals. So I think that once he gets that full season, pre-season under his belt again, and they have an established role for him as that halfback distributor with Brayshaw in the middle, I think that he definitely presents a lot of value for us, and I feel pretty confident about that one.
Yeah, so kicking wise for Melbourne, May predominantly 151 kick-ins, and then Hibberd, and Salem played half the games of May. They had 23 and 17 respectively. I think there's
if we
a
go
couple
back
of
to
games...
2021 though, he was second behind Stephen May with 47 to May's 114.
So Mays definitely seems like the guy there, but I think if Salem plays a full year, that only boosts the confidence in his ability to go down and grab the footy and take that kick in. So, and occasionally, if it's not him taking the kick in, I've noticed he's the next kick. He might be that, might get the +6 instead. So, I think there's just so much upside for him. Like you said, he's already
27 years old. He's in his prime.
Yeah,
doesn't break the over 30 rule. So, I think it feels like the safest mid-pricer, but also still with. I think there's 20 plus points of upside there in a good team, a team that they haven't quite adopted that super fast gameplay of the Richmond, Collingwood, Geelong to a lesser extent. They do like to chip it around, move the defence a little bit. So I think that he definitely has a bit of upside there. So,
but can I interest you in 10 kick-ins from Jake Bowie last year? Played on 100% of the time.
100% of the time.
Can I sell you on that?
I'm going to take a pass there.
Well, you're kidding yourself, mate.
I think Salem's the man for me from that Melbourne side. I think for me right now, before we move on to these other guys, he's the guy that I think right now, as the game has just opened last night, he's sitting at my D3 at the moment. Christian Salem.
Yeah, I got a good feeling he'll stay there.
Next guy here we're talking about, and again, this is another one of those guys that's been talked about that maybe we are not as keen on as maybe some others out there. I think I know the reason as to why his name's been floating out there, but Ed Richards is the next mid-price that we're going to talk about. Price at 73.2, 648,000, so you pay an extra $5,000 and you got Christian Salem. But Ed Richards finished the year pretty strong. If you listen to our podcast about the overpriced defenders, we talked about Caleb Daniel and Bailey Dale. To me, there's just too many mouths to feed in that Bulldogs backline, and I know he finished the year strong, averaged 97 in his last 5. A couple of those games were without Caleb Daniel. There was also a game out there without Treloar. So I think those numbers are influenced a little bit by players missing time. And again, we're assuming everyone's healthy to start the season. So I don't think that there's really the value there that Ed Richards might suggest with those last 5 numbers. So for me, he's a pretty easy scratch.
Yeah, I think when you can have Salem for an extra 5K, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah. Is there anything that you can maybe say to Ed Richards' defence, or is it pretty
other than the fact that the Bulldogs historically are a pretty good scoring team. You do say there's a lot of mouths to feed, but they seem to
23.
They seem to find a way to feed
he's
them.
Up and coming.
Yeah. There's no doubt he's a good player, but sometimes you have to separate. Yeah. footy player from fantasy player, and
That's right.
I just think with the mid-priced options around him, it's not necessarily on my radar.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we can move on from him pretty quickly. This next one here might require a little bit more discussion.
Yes, I think he's been
and I think
touted.
he might be the most selected mid-price on this list. Elliot Yeo.
Yo.
Now, the Yo-Yo, he's priced at 625,000, 70.6 is his price stat figure. So I think that he is someone that we can... we definitely need to spend a bit of time discussing him and his fantasy pedigree. He has had seasons in the past where he has put up a ton, averaging... I think that was in the midfield, though. He has played off half-back before. He was an All-Australian, I think, a few years ago, a little while ago now.
Yep.
But so people are getting excited. Injuries has been his thing as well.
That's the thing. And how old is he now? He's getting on as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that one up here right now. But
Now, I said this to you, I think it was yesterday, but I just get the feeling...
29.
I get the feeling there's this tendency in fantasy where you have a guy like Elliot Yeo, he's dropped so far in value now that people look at that value and they look at his history, they find a couple of seasons where he averaged 100 and they think, shit, I've got to get this guy in. He's averaged 100 before.
Kind of like that Mitch Duggan that we talked about in the last podcast.
Yeah, but you have to, I mean, in this situation, I feel like you have to ask yourself, well, why is he this price? Like, there's a very obvious reason why he's this price. He can't get on the field.
He can't get on the field. I think also the Eagles are just a different team to when he was putting up those big stats.
Yeah.
You know, like 2018, the Eagles were up and about. They won a flag that year.
Yeah.
So, a very different side to what they have now. He was
That's
a few
it.
years younger. He's playing a different role in the midfield.
Yeah.
Some people are saying that obviously off half-back with a poor team, that sometimes that perks your ears up because obviously you think, okay, there's going to be a lot of ball down there.
Yeah.
The Eagles tend to like to chip it around, so...
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm interested to see how long, Adam Simpson persists with that game plan. He's obviously, got them a flag in 2018, but there's been a very distinct change in the way the good sides are going about it. So, in terms of game plan, I'm interested to see whether he carries that kind of chip mark game plan into 2023. But for me, it's just the injuries. It's like, yes, he's averaged 100 before, but in the last 3 seasons, the guy's played, let me do math quickly, 27 games.
Yep.
In the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, barely over a season.
Yeah, some blokes are almost playing that in a season. So, it's one of those ones, if it goes good, it'll go good. I fully expect, like, if he plays 22 games next year, I expect him to average more than he's priced at. I think we could...
How much more? Like, let's say I could guarantee he's going to play 22 games.
Yeah.
Do you think he then comes under consideration?
Yeah, I think I mean, if you can guarantee that, I think he goes at least 15, if not 20 points above. So he's valued at 70. I reckon he goes... He's a caliber of player that he's not going to average much less than 90 if he plays all the games. So if you pick him and he plays all the games, I think you'll be well and truly rewarded. If you pick him and he gets injured, don't come crying, because I think that that's kind of what he's shown in the last 3 years.
So his injury history, there was a groin there as well.
Yeah, OP, I think I read.
Yeah, I think so. That's obviously a tricky one to come back and rehab from. It's one that does often have a lot of setbacks.
Yeah.
I can't remember if there's been any other main ones. Was there a hamstring in there or something?
Yeah.
I can't quite remember. But I struggle with injured players. Coming from a fantasy basketball background, a lot of the times we discount those injured players a little bit too much, and we think we write them off saying that they're injury prone. I know Josh Lloyd, another NBA fantasy analyst out there, he's got a saying where you're injury prone until you're not. You're an Iron Man until you're not. And I do subscribe to that theory a little bit. Just a couple of seasons ago, Josh Kelly was a player that we were talking about as an injury prone player, could never make it through a full season. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he might have played every game last season, fact check me on there, but he played at least the majority of games and was considered to be an injury prone player. I think it is different for some players depending on their age, depending on what their nature of the injury is. So I wouldn't necessarily write it off by saying that he's too injury prone, you can't pick him because solely based on that. It wouldn't shock me if he comes out and he plays a lot of games. That is in the realm of possibility. I actually am not too keen on him just based on the upside that he provides. I think that I see him more of like that mid-80s guy
So even
rather
if he
than
plays-
a mid-90s guy.
Even if he plays the
Yeah.
full... I mean, mid-80s is still 15 points of upside. 15 points of upside.
It's maybe 13, 14, 15.
My main concern is the injury.
Yeah, so and then you couple that again with the injuries, it's enough for me to knock him down. He is definitely a watch for me.
Yep.
I don't know. Look, he played. If I throw some stats out there, he played 2 games in defence last year without any injured scores. Average of 82.5. It's 2 games. It's not really enough for us to go off. But even in 2021, when he was playing 78% CBAs, he played 12 games in a row. 83 points is what he averaged that season, and that's in the midfield. Now, maybe you think he's going to be better off halfback in a poorer side. There is an argument to see there.
Yep.
I still think that for most players, an inside mid role is the best role for fantasy scoring. So I don't think that he's going to be dramatically better than that 83 in a halfback role. So
My
I
understanding
don't
of
really
his
see
big-
him going over 95. I'd be more likely to see him below 90 than above 90 would be my personal opinion on his scoring upside.
Yeah, I think he's one that we both agree we wouldn't be completely shocked if he went well, but I just don't have the confidence.
I think with his injury history and his risk, you want him to be going. You want big upside. You need at least 20 points upside. You need him to go that 90,
and he's got the potential.
95. I personally don't see that in his future, but if you do, then it is enough for me to go, okay, if you think that he can do that, I don't think the injury history is enough for you to put a line through him if you think he can do that 92 to 95 average.
Yeah, all reports are that he seems to be training well and recovering from, I think it was most recently a calf injury I was just reading. But if you've got any intel out of the West and you can hook us up, please.
Give some scoops.
Let us know. We'd love a scoop.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next guy here. 2 more players that we want to cover. The next guy here, I think Matty Mottram dropped his name when we interviewed him when we were talking about some AFL fantasy players. But Jack Bowes moved from the Gold Coast Suns to the Geelong Cats. Look, I'll say it right now. When I looked into the numbers here, I don't see it. I don't see it for Jack Bowes. He was a guy that played well a couple of years ago under the Gold Coast system when they were kicking the ball around. And I think that's what maybe people are remembering and counting on. And they think Geelong. They think, Geelong chip it around. But we know last year, very similar to the Suns, a little bit more direct. Does he even come in as a best 22 player on this team?
That's the question I was going to raise as well. Is like that season you're referring to, Mitch, I think is he averaged 80 off 19 games in 2021. But you're spot on. Like, let's say Jack Bowes gets traded to Hawthorn or gets traded to North Melbourne, then suddenly I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's something here. But like you said, he's going to be either riding the pine or scraping to get in the best squad. So I think, yes, there's the potential for a little bit of upside, but is he going to go and be a big dog at Geelong? I don't think so. They've just traded in Tanner Bruin as well.
Step in there and just go, hey, boys. It's all right. I know you won a premiership last year, but Jack Bowes is here.
Leave it to the Bowes, man. I got this covered.
I don't see that happening.
No. And they've just got such depth in their squad on all lines, pretty much. So there's the notion he can play a bit of halfback. He might be able to.
You've got Stewart. You've got Duggan there. You've got a few other guys that love to come in and collect some of those +6s. So.
All reports out of the Cats are that like he's training really strongly and all the guys like him, but I've never seen a report of a guy that's shit house and nobody likes him. So
exactly,
you're always going to hear that, aren't you?
You're always going to hear the positive stuff, and there's a lot of those reports going on at this time of the year.
Yes.
But he's 25, so he's coming into his prime now. But I don't see the statistical reason as to why anything will be really different going from last year to this year. He only played 5 games for the Gold Coast Suns last year. Now I can't remember if that was injury affected or if that was him not making the team. Couldn't quite
I can't
tell you
recall
that
either.
much. I think there was a game where he started as the sub. I think it was in round 14, his first game. He actually started as the sub, got activated, scored 29 points. Obviously, that's in a shortened game time. But if you're starting as the sub for the Gold Coast Suns and you're going over to the Geelong Cats, the reigning premiers,
trouble.
Not confident enough to pick him in my fantasy squad. I know he has had some decent stretches in the past, but for me, it's a pretty quick. Once I start digging into the stats, it's a pretty quick line through him.
Last 2 years as well at the Suns, so 21 and 22, he's averaged close to 4 kick-ins game as well. You think he's going to be kicking in for the Cats?
I think there might be a few guys ahead of him in that line.
Yeah, again, he heads down there and, boys, I got this.
Hey, Tom Stewart, move out of the way. I'll
Yeah,
kick in
I'll
here,
grab
mate.
the spare, Sharon. No worries. No, I just think, a lot of unknown, and going to the reigning premiers is not where you're going to go down and become a big dog.
Last player that we're going to talk about here, we'll go through him a bit briefly. Now, he's a guy that I actually really like. He's had a rough run of it in recent years. Yeah. Hunter Clark is maybe a forgotten name out there.
Luscious hair on this bloke, I believe. Am I right? It has to wear the headband.
He's got to wear the headband.
Locks.
He's a guy that has sort of been on the radars for fantasy managers for a couple of years. He's had some injury unluckiness in seasons past. He's 23 years of age, going to be 24 this season.
Yep.
There's a couple of precursors in a few seasons past that he might have been heading into the midfield, getting some CBAs, but injuries have kind of prevented that from happening. And I worry that the time has sort of passed by him with some of those injuries delaying his opportunity. But he is someone that does have a little bit of pedigree when it comes to his junior numbers. And if he was to get into that centre bounce midfield, I think he could do well. He also has an injury-affected score, ended on 16. That brings his price down a little bit. But again, with the AFL Fantasy's pricing mechanism, that discount is applied to his last season in 2021, where he averaged 72.6. So if he just played another couple of games, we could have got him a lot cheaper. But
even in that year in 2021, he had injury concerns. He missed close to 10 games.
He played 13 games.
There was a span there where he
had a couple of hundreds in there.
Yeah, he turned up 3 times in 4 weeks, but then there's also a stinky 50 in there as well.
37, which is not a sub-defective game as well. So
yeah, okay. Well, I think with Hunter Clark, if you're even looking at him, you're probably looking at him based on a hope that new coach, new opportunity. But in terms, like some of the other guys that we've listed on this pod, far more in the forefront of our minds.
I think the only thing that would really perk my ears up about Hunter Clark, if I saw him getting centre bounces in the preseason and he was looking good in that role, I would definitely have him highlighted. Yeah. If I see him playing off that halfback a little bit more and just kind of doing more of the same as what we've seen in the past, then I'm putting a line through him. But he's just a name that if I see him in the centre bounce early in the preseason, I'm keeping my eyes on him because I think there is some upside. He has demonstrated in small stretches, like I said, a few tons in his time, that he has the capacity to do it. He's quite cheap at price at 68, so he is considered maybe an ability to be a stepping stone. That even if he averages sort of 80, 85, that's close to 20 points upside. So I think he is someone that could be there in the right role, but it would really require that centre bounce role for me to really consider him.
For sure. So, confirming of the blokes we've talked about, Mitch, you are the highest on Salem?
I'm highest on Salem. I'm looking, obviously, Himmelberg's role. Yep. I'm looking at Elliot Yeo and what he's doing and how he's feeling. Yep. I'm looking at Kadeem Coleman and his kick-in responsibilities with Daniel Rich.
Yep.
And then also Hunter Clark, if he's in the centre bounces, then I'm maybe perking my ears up as well. But for me, Salem right now was the only one that I feel confident in.
I agree with you in terms of Salem. I mean, I'm open and I'd be very happy to be proved wrong in terms of Andy McGrath because, if he presents as a guy who can score big, then I'd love to be proven wrong there because I know there's a few people who are definitely keen on him. So, again, I reckon we'd be very keen to hear people's thoughts.
Yeah.
And,
Let us know in the comments down
and a little bit of a justification as well, I think, is always good. Yeah. If you kind of float a name, let us know why, because that kind of, we're looking for all the information that we can find as well.
Of course. Yeah, I might steal your pick and then we'll see how we go.
Claim it as our own.
Yeah, we'll take all the credit. But yeah, let us know down in the comments, guys, what you think down below. Next week, we're going to moving on to the midfielders.
There's going to be some guys to cover too.
Could be some juicy podcasts coming up there.
Some hot takes. I reckon Mitch has got a few takes on Tommy Mitchell that might surprise a few people.
Well, we'll see. There's a few names to talk about there.
Teaser there.
Yeah, let's get them in, guys. So let us know down in the comments. Any questions? Give us a big thumbs up. Make sure you guys are subscribed again on the YouTube channel. We are looking for subscribers, very much so at the moment. Give us a 5-star rating if you are listening on to Apple Podcasts, and make sure you're following us along there as well. And happy team picking, guys, with the game open, and we'll see you next time. Bye.